gang, it's Kara and Dobie Joe again. How are you, Dobie Joe? You doing good today? We are going to work on pages 16 through 18. We're going to learn exactly what tablature is, and we're going to learn how to pick single notes. I'm going to go ahead and check my tuning on my guitar. You should do that every time you pick up your guitar. Tune and tune often. I think I've given you a cartoon somewhere in this book that shows me asking if a student is tuned up, and they said, oh, I tuned it when I was at home. You need to tune every time you move your guitar, every time you go from one environment to another, you need to tune. All right, let's talk about page 16 in your book. The musical staff versus tablature, okay? Tablature is a really easy language to learn and to speak. Tablature is 6 lines. Each line represents a string on your guitar, okay? Now, it's a little counterintuitive sometimes because you would think it's opposite of what I'm about to tell you, but it's in fact this way. The skinniest string is on this down here, is on the very top of those 6 lines, okay? Your low E string, this low guy, he's the bottom one of the 6 strings, okay? An analogy I like to use with my students, if we were in front of a pond and we had a really heavy big rock and we threw it in the pond, it's going to hit that water and sink like a brick, like a big rock. If we have a feather, a skinny, light feather, we throw it out in the pond, it's going to float around on the top, okay? So your skinny string, your high E, is going to float on the top of those 6 lines. Your big thick E, your big heavy guy, is going to sink to the bottom like a big heavy rock, okay? All right? So on page 16, I talk a little bit about whether you should learn the notes and how to read the music and my philosophy on that whole thing. Do it if you want to, but if you are a grown-up person and you're doing this for relaxation and to learn how to jam and play in church or something like that, you don't need to read musical notes. You just don't need to. I'm sorry, but you don't. Is it a good thing to know? Sure. Is it going to be a deal breaker if you don't? Absolutely not. Okay? All right. The top line, it says a 5-line musical staff, and that shows you all those crazy notes starting from a low E that's got ledger lines down on it, and those are black dots, and they work their way up the staff line. If you're reading the musical staff, you've got to memorize what each one of those dots want you to do, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. I'm just going to be blunt. There's no rhyme or reason to it. If you read tablature, if you see a 0 on your low E string, like you do in the very first number I'm asking you to play in that tablature is a 0 on your low E. Thanks for hanging out, Dobie Joe. I'll see you next time. That means open or 0. You just pluck that string without pushing anything down, okay? The next number in that tablature is a number 1 on the same string. Use your first finger and press down on the first fret. The next thing you're told to do on that same string is a 3. So you use your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret, okay? I'm still on page 16. I'm reading through that tablature example I've given you, okay? After the 3, all the notes start appearing on the A string. First thing is an open A, and then a 2, and then a 3. And then you go to your open D string. That was a bad 2. 3. And then you go to your G string, open 2, your B string, open 1, 3, and your high E string, open 1, 3, and then I take you up to 5. Okay? All right. That's what that means on page 16. Let's break it down a little bit more, shall we? All right. I said we were going to try to get all the way through to page 18 today, so let's just clip right along with it. So on page 17, I talk more about that whole thing that I was talking about a second ago, about the top string is on the top line of your tablature is this guy down here. Totally counterintuitive, I know. And the bottom string is this guy down here. So I show you, if you looked at your guitar and you slowly pivot it, how those strings are set up, okay? Now, then in the second diagram there, I actually break down the 0, and it says open thick E string, and then the next arrow points to the 1. I'm never going to ask you to play it that quickly, but that's what that is. So if you follow every one of those arrows, it tells you exactly what that number means. An important thing to remember, those numbers on the tablature represent the frets you are supposed to use, you're supposed to press down on, not the fingers you're supposed to use, okay? Do not confuse those numbers with fingers. It just so happens that for the most part in this book, I am going to take you up to second position. But a lot of the songs in here, we're going to use our first finger on the 1, second finger on the 2, third finger on the 3. In a few more pages, I'm going to be teaching you how to use your first finger on the 2nd fret, your second finger on the 3rd fret, your third finger on the 4th fret, and your pinky on the 5th fret. We're going to go there too, but not right away. Okay? Our job today is to understand how to read this tablature. Okay, so once again, I said we were just going to go as far as page 18. Let's go ahead and look there now, okay? Now, when you're picking your strings individually, we might have talked about this when we learned the 1, 2, 3, 4 exercise, and you should have already warmed up on your 1, 2, 3, 4 exercise. But you're going to be picking in a downward motion. So you pick that string down, okay? I have a lot of beginners that will come in and want to pick everything up like this. You'd be surprised at how many people want to do that. Pick in a downward motion until I tell you otherwise. That's coming soon enough, okay? All right, let's turn on the metronome. See what we got set at. All right, we're going to try to go as slowly as we need to so that you can actually play along with me on this. I've still got it set down there around 50, and we're going to go every other beat again. On line 1 of page 18, you will notice that most of those numbers fall on this high E string, okay? We do have a first fret, number 1 on the B string, and the first measure there at the end, and then the last 4 notes that we play are on the B string, number 1, okay? So let's try number 1 together on the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, get ready for this 1. All right, that was line number 1. Now when you are using when you're flat picking, using a pick, I want you to rest your arm up here and try to avoid laying it across the top of your guitar. Let me show you what happens when you do that. Here's an E chord. See what happened as soon as I touched the top of my guitar with my hand or with the rest of my arm? So try to avoid this kind of a play and stay right around the sound hole. Don't play too close up to your bridge. You'll sound real tinny, okay? A couple of little tips there. Let's look at number 2. Line number 2. You ready? Let's go ahead and go for it. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. Now remember, I always say do as I say and not as I do. You might notice that my thumb's wrapped around there. I'm 61 years old. I've been playing the guitar since I was 10, and I'm self-taught. So no one ever taught me to keep my thumb back there. I'm teaching you because I know it's the most efficient way to do it, all right? My hands grew up around a guitar neck, and so they kind of modified themselves to fit it. I don't want you to go through that pain. On line number 3, we're going to pick our G string now. And it is open with the exception of when we get to the last measure of line 3, we are going to have to push down on a 2 on that G string, okay? All right, line number 3, let's try it together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now on line number 3, I'm going to turn the metronome off for just a second here. If you ever have any problems, and I guarantee you, you will have problems, let's say between any particular two notes, okay, and I kind of have my eye on the last, if I look at the line 3 and I count the last 5 notes, so it's all the notes, the 4 notes in the last measure and the last note in the measure right before it, where it goes from 1 to 2 on the next string, okay? If that was hard for you, I want you to go back and practice that slowly over and over again, okay? I always want you to go back into a piece of music and not feel like you've got to play it perfectly all the way through. Anytime you see a piece of music, play it as slowly as you need to get the feel for the piece and get an idea, kind of map out where your fingers are going to go. And then maybe even take a pencil and circle sections that were difficult for you. Isolate those sections and practice those sections over and over again. Then try to do the whole piece again, okay? Isolating pieces, it's a perfect way to become a better instrumentalist, any way you look at it. I recently won the National Mountain Dulcimer competition, and you have to play 4 songs, and every one of those songs that I arranged to play had difficult sections, and I would sit in here with my metronome on very slowly, and I would look at my clock and I would say, Kara, you're going to play these 2, 3, this one measure, whatever, over and over again at this slow tempo for 15 minutes. I guarantee you, if you practice that way, you're actually going to gain something from it. If you practice sloppy and fast every time you sit down, I'm sorry, gang, you're not going to gain anything from that. You got to go slow. You got to be methodical about the way you practice, okay? All right, let's look at line number 4. I'm going to count us off. We're going to try it together. No surprises here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I almost missed that one. Okay, there we go. Now let's look at line 5. We're going to do it the same way. We're going to play our tablature, and then we'll talk about those chords that run across the top of the tablature. Okay, line 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, very good. Now you want to practice that over and over again, like I always say. Now what's going on above that tablature? Above the tablature, you're going to see chords. Okay, you see an A minor 7. I'm asking you to strum that 4 times. And then the next measure is an E minor 7 strummed 4 times. The third measure is A minor 7 strummed 4 times. And the last measure, you're going to strum your E minor 7 twice and your A minor 7 twice. Okay? Now, you can practice this by rewinding this video. When I'm playing those single notes, you can practice the chords above him. Da, 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 da. That's what we're shooting for, okay? Now I want you to play the chords along with me, though. And likewise, play these chords along with me to practice the chord changes. But then you can go back and play the notes while you hear me playing the chords, okay? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's our A minor 7. 1, 2. Oh, I hit my E string there. 3, 4. E minor 7. 2. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? All right. Listen, you know what? When I was playing that A minor 7, about 50% of the time I was accidentally hitting my E string. And you know why? Because in my head, the very first time I did it, I went, I better not do that again. And I started thinking all left brain about it, and I kept messing it up. Part of learning how to practice your instrument and going through these pages is being really as self-aware as you possibly can be. If you can be self-aware and realize when you're setting yourself up for failure up here, that's a story you're telling yourself, and you can set yourself up to think positive thoughts instead. Now, since I only had 4 measures to play for you, I didn't have time to really go chill out. If I was practicing that here and it wasn't on a video, I would have stopped immediately and taken a few deep breaths and started again and tried to adjust. I would have tried to adjust what I was thinking in my head. Because every time you think, oh man, I'm not going to be able to do this, or I can't do this, that's exactly what you're going to get. Okay? You got to think positive thoughts. You got to imagine yourself playing these exercises perfectly. And when you mess up, be patient with yourself. It's not the end of the world. You're going to do this over and over and over again. And if you hang with me on every page, I'm going to get you through this. You really, it's like a doctor giving you medicine. If you take the medicine like it's been prescribed to you, you're going to get better. You just are going to get better. If you take a pill every now and then you stop taking your pills, you're not going to get better. So please hang with me on each one of these pages. I'm going to give you all the pep talks I can stand to give you, all that you can stand to hear from me. Contact me on social media if you need any help with anything specifically, and we'll talk it through. But I know you got this, and please be patient enough to play these exercises slowly with me. You'll be really glad you did in the long run. Okay? Thanks so much for hanging out with me again. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.